Waitress paid for an elderly woman's coffee. Hours later, she was shocked by a visit from the prince. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. Elise had learned to measure a day by small sounds: the bell above the cafe door, the scrape of a chair, the sigh of a man who wanted more coffee without paying for it. In the late morning, when the rush thinned and the tables grew honest again, she could almost pretend the world was not made of debts. "Mademoiselle Elise," Monsieur le Duc called from behind the counter, "the third table wants bread. Not tomorrow. Now." "Yes, monsieur," she answered, and carried the basket with both hands as if steadiness could make it fuller. The third table was a pair of clerks who always asked for extra and always forgot to tip. One of them glanced at her apron and said to his companion too loudly, "See, even the threads are tired." Elise placed the bread down gently. "Here you are, monsieur." The clerk leaned back, grinning. "You speak so politely for someone who runs all day." "It is my habit," Elise said. "Habit," the other repeated, amused. "He means it is all she has." Elise did not answer. She had learned that silence could be a kind of shield. She turned away, her shoulders straight, and went to wipe a table that did not need wiping. At the far corner, half hidden by the post near the window, an elderly woman sat alone. She had been there since the early hour. Most noticed her only because she did not belong to any familiar pattern. She was not one of the regulars. She did not come with gossip. She did not come with confidence. Her hands hovered around her cup, as if warmth were something she had to ask permission to touch. Her coat was clean but old. Her bonnet was tied too carefully, the way women tie things when they have little else to control. Elise watched without meaning to. She saw the small plate beside the cup. It was empty. The woman stared at it as though it might offer her advice. A young man at the nearby table whispered to his friend, "She looks like a ghost who forgot the cemetery." His friend snorted. A ghost would be cheaper. At least it would not order coffee. Elise's fingers tightened around the cloth. She turned her head, but not quickly. If she did too quickly, they would know she cared. If she did not turn at all, she would feel herself become like them. The elderly woman reached into a small purse. She poured coins into her palm. She counted them once. Then she counted again, slower. Her lips moved, making no sound. Elise stepped closer with her coffee pot. "Would you like more, madame?" The old woman looked up, startled, as if she had been called back from a long distance. "No, no, thank you." Her eyes were light, almost too clear for a face so tired. She studied Elise's expression, as if searching for a trap hidden in it. Elise kept her voice gentle. "It has been some time since you ordered. Is everything to your liking?" "It is. Very good," the woman said. The words sounded rehearsed. Then, after a pause, she added, "I do not wish to trouble anyone." "You are not troubling anyone," Elise said before she could stop herself. The woman's mouth tightened, almost a smile. "You are kind. Kindness is a costly thing in Paris." "Then I must be careful not to spend it foolishly," Elise replied. The woman's gaze softened. "You speak like someone who has been hungry." Elise felt heat rise in her cheeks. "Many have been hungry, madame." "Yes," the woman murmured. "Many." She lowered her eyes to her coins again. Her thumb brushed each one, lingering, as if each was an old acquaintance. Then her hand stilled. Elise noticed the smallest detail, the way the woman's wrist trembled when she held them too long. Not the tremble of illness alone, the tremble of being seen while counting. Elise moved as though adjusting a napkin on the table. Her hand slipped toward the edge where the bill would be left, and she remembered the coins in her own pocket. They were not many. They had been meant for bread at night, or for soap, or for the rent she was already late in paying. She heard Monsieur le Duc's voice in her mind. "Do you think generosity keeps a roof over your head?" She also heard her mother, resulting in an old memory, sharp and small. "Give when you can, because one day you will not be able to." Elise glanced at the door. No one was watching closely, only the clerks, but their attention was on their own jokes. She leaned nearer, her tone casual, almost bored, as if discussing the weather. "Madame, you may leave your coins. I will take care of the rest." The elderly woman's head lifted. "No, I have enough." "You have enough for what?" Elise asked softly. The woman's lips pressed together. "For coffee." Elise's smile was small. "Then you have enough for coffee." "Let that be true. The old woman's eyes narrowed, suspicious now. Why? Elise kept her voice low. Because I choose it. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have, Elise said. The woman stared a moment longer, her gaze sharp, then suddenly weary. She exhaled. You should not. Elise's fingers touched the coins in the woman's palm, not taking them, only guiding her hand back toward the purse. Please. The elderly woman closed her purse slowly. If someone sees you, they will see a waitress doing her work, Elise said. The woman's eyes glistened, but she blinked the moisture away quickly, with the pride of someone who refused to fall apart in public. You will regret it. I regret many things, Elise replied, and the honesty startled her. This will not be one of them. For the first time, the elderly woman smiled properly, though it trembled at the edges. Then I hope your regrets grow fewer. Elise nodded, unable to find the right reply. She stepped away, heart beating faster than the task required. She went behind the counter as if seeking shelter among cups and plates. Monsieur le Duc was counting coins, his mouth set. He did not look up at first. Mademoiselle Elise, the two gentlemen at the window are waiting. Yes, monsieur. As Elise turned to go, Monsieur le Duc's hand shot out and caught her wrist. Not roughly, but firmly enough to stop her. She froze, then looked at him. His eyes darted toward the corner table. Do not play the saint in my café. Elise's throat tightened. I do not know what you mean. He leaned closer, his voice a hiss meant only for her. I saw your hand. Do you think I am blind? I did nothing improper, Elise said, keeping her tone even. You did something foolish, he corrected, and foolishness costs. Who pays when you empty your pocket? Not the Lord, not the city. Me. I pay, because I must pay you. You pay me little enough, she said, before she could stop herself. His eyes widened, then narrowed. Careful, Elise swallowed. Monsieur, she looked as though she had no one. That is not your business. He released her wrist as if it were dirty. This is Paris. Everyone has no one. Now move. Elise went, her cheeks burning. At the window table, the gentleman ordered 2 coffees and argued over politics as if it were a game. Elise listened without meaning to, because in a café you learn things whether you wish to or not. The city is full of wounded pride, one man said, tapping the table. Everyone wants their place back. And the ones who never had a place want to climb, the other replied. Dangerous. Always dangerous. Elise placed their cups down. Here you are, monsieur. One of them glanced at her. Tell me, mademoiselle, what do you want? The question struck her as absurd. Want, as if wanting were a luxury sold over the counter. I want you to pay, she said simply. They laughed. Practical, the second man said. Elise moved away, but the laughter followed her like a trailing thread. She returned to the corner table after a time, pretending to tidy. The elderly woman had finished her coffee. She sat very straight, hands folded now, as if she were waiting for permission to depart. Elise placed a clean cloth down and spoke softly. Madame, I hope you will return. The woman looked up. I hope I will be able. You will, Elise said, more certain than she had any right to be. The elderly woman studied her again as if collecting her face for later. You have a name? Elise blinked. Yes, madame. Tell me. A hesitation rose in Elise's throat. Names could be used like leashes too. Yet something in the woman's eyes made refusal feel cruel. Elise, she said. The woman repeated it under her breath. Elise, and yours, madame. The elderly woman's gaze shifted to the window. Sabine, she said at last. Then, with a small tightening around her mouth, she added, Only Sabine. Elise nodded. Then, Madame Sabine, I wish you a safe walk. Madame Sabine's hand moved, slow and deliberate. From her pocket, she drew a folded handkerchief. It was white, though worn. She held it for a moment as if deciding whether to offer it. Then she tucked it away again. You are young noted for being brave, she said quietly. Elise almost smiled. I am noted for carrying trays without dropping them. Madame Sabine's eyes warmed. The world often calls that trivial. It is not. It is a kind of endurance. Elise felt her throat tighten again, and she did not know why. Madame. Madame Sabine lifted a hand, stopping her. Do not thank me. I have given you nothing. But you have, Elise insisted. Madame Sabine rose slowly. For a moment she wavered, and Elise stepped forward instinctively. "I am well," Madame Sabine said quickly, pride sharpening her voice. Elise stopped her hands mid-air, then lowered them. "Forgive me. There is nothing to forgive," Madame Sabine said. She paused, then added, softer, "Keep your hands for people who accept them." Elise nodded. Madame Sabine moved toward the door. At the threshold, she looked back. Elise met her gaze. For a heartbeat, the cafe noise seemed to dim. The clerk's laughter, the clink of cups, the murmur of talk, all of it receded. There was only the old woman's eyes. "Elise," Madame Sabine said, as if tasting the name again, "do not let them make you believe you are small." Before Elise could answer, Madame Sabine stepped outside and disappeared into the street. Elise stood still a moment. Then she realized she had not heard the bell over the door ring when Madame Sabine left. That was impossible. The bell always rang. Her mind shook itself. Of course it rang. She simply had not noticed. She went back to work. The afternoon dragged. The light shifted. The cafe filled, emptied, filled again. Elise served and cleaned and smiled on command. Monsieur le Duc watched her with a look that promised later words. At one point, he called her over. "You think you are clever," he said. "I think nothing of the kind," Elise replied. He leaned in, lowering his voice. "If you wish to give away coins, do it outside my walls. Inside, you obey my rules." Elise kept her hands folded. "Yes, monsieur." "And if that old woman returns," he continued, "she pays. Or she leaves. Understand?" Elise felt a quiet rage rise, controlled but hot. "She is a customer. She is a burden," he corrected. "And you are not paid to collect burdens." Elise looked at him steadily. "Then what am I paid to collect, monsieur?" He stared at her as if she had spoken in another language. "Do not become insolent." Elise lowered her eyes. "No, monsieur." He walked away, satisfied. Elise returned to wiping the counter. Her arms ached, her feet hurt. Hunger sat at the back of her throat like a stone. She reached into her pocket and felt the absence of the coins she had used. The pocket was lighter, and so was something else in her. A tightness, a bitterness. It surprised her. She had expected regret. Instead, she felt clearer. Later, as she carried a tray of pastries, she heard the bell above the door ring sharply. Not the lazy ring of a regular. Not the hurried ring of a man late to work. This ring had a suddenness, as if the world had inhaled. The cafe grew quiet in an unnatural way. Conversations did not stop fully, but they thinned, like a cloth pulled too taut. Elise glanced toward the door. Two men stood there, revealed by their posture alone. Their coats were well cut, their boots polished. Not noblemen, perhaps, but men trained to stand still with authority. Behind them in the street, a carriage waited. Not a common carriage. Its wheels were clean. Its horses were glossy and controlled. The driver sat upright, hands steady. On the side panel was a crest that Elise did not know well enough to name, but she recognized what it meant. Money and power. And above that, something more dangerous. Attention. Elise's mouth went dry. Monsieur le Duc emerged from behind the counter, as if summoned. He wiped his hands on his apron and hurried forward, his face shifting into an eagerness Elise had never seen him offer to anyone. Monsieur," he said, bowing slightly. "How may I serve you?" One of the men spoke. "We will speak with the waitress named Elise Moreau." Elise's heart lurched. She nearly dropped the tray. Monsieur le Duc's eyes snapped toward her. Elise stood frozen, tray in hand, as if she could disappear into the wood of the counter. Monsieur le Duc moved toward her, then stopped. His mouth opened, closed. He turned back to the men with a laugh that sounded wrong in his own throat. "Ah, yes. Elise. She is—" A figure stepped past the men. He was dressed simply for someone who could afford extravagance without thought. Yet nothing about him was simple. He filled the doorway, not by size but by presence. He did not look around as if uncertain. He looked around as if judging calmly, as though he had already been told everything, and had come only to confirm it with his own eyes. His hair was dark, cut neatly. His expression was controlled, almost severe, the kind of face that rarely smiled because it did not need to. The cafe became still. Even the clerks stopped their muttering. Elise's hands tightened on the tray. Monsieur le Duc bowed lower. "Your Highness," he breathed, the words audible. The man's gaze lifted. It landed on Elise as if he had been aiming for her all along. "Elise Moreau," he said, pronouncing her name with a precise accent, unhurried. "You will come here." Her legs felt strange. She set the tray down carefully because she could not bear to make a clatter. She wiped her hands on her apron because they had begun to sweat. She took one step forward. Monsieur le Duc whispered, panicked, "Lower your eyes! Lower your—" Elise did not fully lower her eyes. She could not. She looked at the man's face, then quickly at the floor near his boots, then back again, uncertain of the rule. The man studied her, and something like faint displeasure crossed his features. Not at her exactly, at the room, at the noise of the world around them. "Come," he repeated. Elise walked toward him, feeling every gaze in the café like a weight. She stopped a respectful distance away, hands clasped. "Yes, monsieur," she said, then corrected herself quickly. "Your Highness." A faint flicker appeared in his eyes. Not amusement, not kindness, just acknowledgement that she had adjusted. "You paid for a woman's coffee this morning," he said. Elise's breath caught. She heard murmurs behind her. Monsieur le Duc took a step forward, face pale. "Your Highness, if there has been some misunderstanding, I assure you—" "Silence," the man said quietly. It was not shouted. It was not threatened. It was simply spoken as a fact. Monsieur le Duc closed his mouth. Elise stared at the man, trying to understand. "Yes," she answered, keeping her voice steady. "I paid." "Why?" The question was sharp in its simplicity. Elise's throat tightened, but she lifted her chin a fraction. "Because she was alone," Elise said. "Because she was counting coins as if each one was a humiliation. Because I could." The man's gaze did not soften. If anything, it hardened, but not with cruelty, with concentration. "You do not know who she was," he said. "No," Elise admitted. "You do not know what you touched," he continued. Elise's hands tightened. "If she was important, then someone else should have noticed her before I did." The café breathed in. Monsieur le Duc made a strangled sound. "Mademoiselle!" Elise realized what she had said, and heat rushed to her cheeks. She lowered her eyes quickly now, heart pounding. She had spoken as if she were equal to him. That was dangerous. The man did not react with anger. He studied her. "What is your wage?" Elise blinked, startled by the change. "Pardon, Your Highness?" "What is your wage?" he repeated. Elise hesitated. Saying it aloud felt like exposing herself, yet refusing felt worse. "Very little," she said. A pause. The man's jaw tightened slightly. "And you still paid?" "Yes," Elise answered, and heard her own voice tremble despite her effort. He turned his head slightly, addressing the room without looking away from her. "This café is called what?" Monsieur le Duc hurried forward, voice shaking with eagerness and fear. "Café du Lit, Your Highness. A humble establishment, but respectable." The man nodded once, then looked back at Elise. "You will speak with me, here, in front of everyone." The thought made Elise's stomach twist. She tried to gather herself. "If I have done something wrong, you have done something that has consequences," he corrected, and the distinction chilled her. He glanced toward a small table near the wall, one that was often used for counting receipts. "There." Elise looked at Monsieur le Duc, as if seeking permission out of habit. Monsieur le Duc's face was tight, but he said nothing. Elise walked to the table. The man followed, and the two men at the door remained near the entrance like statues. When Elise sat, she sat on the edge of the chair, back straight, hands folded on her lap. The man did not sit immediately. He stood beside the chair opposite as if measuring the room. The café noise resumed, but in whispers. Spoons clinked too softly. Chairs were moved with exaggerated care. Then the man sat. Elise's breath caught again. Being this close to him made his authority feel heavier. She noticed his gloves clean, and the way he set them down neatly. She noticed the way his eyes did not roam. They stayed on her face, as if it were an answer he expected. "Do you know my name?" he asked. Elise swallowed. "Prince Henri," she said, because she had heard Monsieur le Duc. "Henri de Valois," he corrected quietly. Elise nodded, because there was nothing else to do. "Madame Sabine has been under protection for many years," he said. Elise's brows drew together. "Under protection?" "Yes. She did not look protected, Elise said, before she could restrain herself noted. A faint flicker again, not amusement, something like annoyance directed elsewhere. The protection is not always visible, he said. It is not always sufficient. Elise tried to understand the words. She was not a beggar, she murmured. Not truly. She was proud. She is proud, Henri said. And alone. Elise's chest tightened. I did not know. No, he said. And there was a strange heaviness in the simple word. You did not. He leaned forward slightly. The movement drew Elise's attention in a way she disliked noting. Not because it was improper, but because it revealed how easily her mind could be pulled. When you paid, he said, did she speak to you? Yes, Elise answered quickly. We exchanged words, nothing more. What did she say? Elise hesitated. She asked my name, and you gave it. Yes. Henri's gaze sharpened. Did she say her own? She said Sabine, Elise replied. Only Sabine. Henri's fingers tightened around his glove, then released. She chose you, he murmured. Elise blinked. Pardon? Henri lifted his eyes. She chose to leave your café with your name in her mind. Elise's mouth went dry. Why would that matter, Your Highness? Henri's face did not change, but the air between them did. It felt heavier. You are young, he said, and you have not been trained to understand what names can do. Elise swallowed. I know what my name can do. It can be called when someone wants me to work faster. Henri stared at her. For a moment, his expression almost wavered. Almost. Then it steadied again. You do not understand, he said. Then explain, Elise said, then immediately added, If it pleases you, Your Highness. Henri paused. The café seemed to listen. I cannot explain here, he said finally. Elise's heart sank. Secrets. The moment a prince enters your day, it becomes full of secrets. He reached into his coat and drew out a small card. He set it on the table with 2 fingers. Elise did not touch it. Henri pointed to it. Read. Elise lowered her eyes. The card bore an understanding, an address written in careful hand and a time. Tonight, she whispered. Henri nodded. Elise looked up. You want me to go there? I want you to come there, he corrected. Elise's lips parted. Why? Henri's gaze held hers. Because you have involved yourself in something that began before you were born. Elise's pulse hammered. I paid for a coffee. Henri's eyes narrowed. You paid for more than coffee. Elise's fingers curled in her lap. If Madame Sabine requires help, then you are the one with means, not me. Henri's jaw tightened. Means are not always the question. What is the question then? Elise asked, and she heard her own voice shake now. Henri hesitated, and the hesitation frightened her more than certainty would have. It suggested a man balancing something fragile. Then he spoke, low enough that only she could hear. She believes you are honest. Elise blinked, startled by the word. Honest, as if it were rare. Henri continued, voice steady again. She believes your gesture had no ambition. Elise felt her throat tighten. Not with pride, with something like grief. Henri watched her carefully. Was she wrong? Elise's eyes burned. She fought it. No, she said. She was not wrong. A pause. Henri leaned back slightly. Then come. Elise looked down at the card. The address meant nothing to her, and yet it felt like a door opening beneath her feet. If I refuse, she asked, almost whispering. Henri's gaze hardened. Then you may never understand why she looked at you as if you mattered. Elise's chest tightened. The old woman's shows flashed in her mind. Do not let them make you believe you are small. Elise lifted her head. And if I go, what then? Henri's eyes remained fixed on hers. Then you will hear the truth that she has guarded too long. Elise swallowed. Truth about what? Henri's voice was quiet. About promises. About debts. About the kind of silence that keeps a family standing. Elise's hands trembled, and she clenched them. Henri stood. He set his gloves back on his hand with deliberate calm. You will come at the hour written. Elise remained seated, stunned. Your Highness, Henri's gaze fell to her apron. It was not contempt. It was an assessment that seemed strangely to contain a kind of discomfort. You may wear what you have, he said. No one will be allowed to insult you at that address. Elise's heart gave a strange, sharp movement. "No one insults me here," she lied. Henri's eyes lifted. "They do," Elise swallowed. Henri turned to leave. The café seemed to exhale as he stepped away from the table. Monsieur le Duc rushed forward, bowing again, voice syrupy. "Your Highness, what an honor!" Henri did not respond. He walked past him without a glance. At the door, he stopped and looked back at Elise. For a moment, the coldness of his face seemed less like cruelty and more like armor. He spoke one last sentence, his voice flat but weighted. "Do not speak of this to anyone." Elise nodded, though her mind was full of questions. Henri left. The two men followed. The carriage waited and then rolled away, leaving the street suddenly too ordinary. The café erupted in whispers. Did you see his eyes? What did she do? Did she smile at him? She must have planned it. Elise stood slowly, the card still on the table. Her fingers moved toward it without thinking. A hand slammed down on the card before she could touch it. Monsieur le Duc leaned over her, his face pale with anger and fear that pretended to be authority. He spoke through his teeth, low enough to cut. "You will not drag a prince's attention into my café and call it harmless," he said, and when Elise tried to step past him, Monsieur le Duc blocked her path and hissed that if she stepped out after a prince, she would return to find her place gone, her wages withheld and her name ruined in the neighborhood by nightfall. Elise did not move at once. Monsieur le Duc's hand stayed planted on the card like a stamp of ownership. His face hovered close to hers, and the café's whispers pressed in, hungry for spectacle. "You hear me?" he said. Elise kept her voice low. "I hear you, monsieur." "Then you will do as you are told," he continued. "You will stay in your place." "My place is where you point," Elise replied, and surprised herself with the steadiness. "And today, you pointed at humiliation." His eyes flashed. "Watch your tongue. I am watching it," she said. "It is the only thing I have that cannot be taken without my permission." He leaned closer, breath smelling of bitter coffee. "You think you can speak like that because a carriage stopped outside? Do you imagine you are suddenly protected?" Elise glanced at the card under his hand. "You are afraid. I am practical," he snapped. "You are afraid," she repeated softly. "Because if I go and something goes wrong, you think it will fall on you." His jaw tightened. "It will fall on all of us. The street will talk. Customers will leave. My license, my livelihood," Elise cut in quietly, "is already thin as paper. Do not pretend you worry for it now." He stared at her as if weighing whether to raise his voice. He did not. He lowered it, which felt worse. "If you step out tonight," he said, "you will find your apron folded on the counter when you return. And your room upstairs? That will no longer be yours. Do you understand me?" Elise looked around. Faces turned away too late. Ears pretended not to listen. Everyone wanted the story without the shame of admitting they wanted it. She lifted her eyes to Monsieur le Duc again. "If I stay, will you suddenly be generous? Will you raise my wage? Will you stop taking a coin here and there when you count the draw?" His nostrils flared. "You accuse me?" "I observe," she said. His hand pressed harder on the card. "You will not go." Elise's fingers hovered near his. She did not grab. She did not snatch. She simply waited, like water waiting for a crack. "Monsieur le Duc," she said gently, "you cannot keep a prince from speaking to anyone, not even to me." His eyes flicked around, as if the prince might still be in the doorway. "And you cannot keep a prince from ruining you," he hissed. Elise nodded once. "Then I will not help you pretend I can be safe by staying small." He stared, then drew his hand back, sharp and angry, as though the card had burned him. "Take it," he spat. "Go. Run after your dream. And when you come crawling back, do not expect a chair." Elise picked up the card with careful fingers. "I do not run after dreams," she said. "I run after truths." "You will trip," he muttered. "Perhaps," she replied, and slipped the card into her pocket. The rest of the afternoon passed with every gesture watched. Elise poured coffee as if it were ordinary work, but her hands felt borrowed. Every time the bell rang, her heart jumped. When a customer laughed, she heard mockery even if it was not aimed at her. When Monsieur le Duc called her name, it sounded like a threat. At dusk, he blocked her near the back door. "You will finish the floor," he said. "I finish it every day," Elise replied. "Tonight you will finish it twice," he said, "to remember who commands here." Elise met his gaze. "Tonight I will leave when my shift ends." His voice dropped. "And you will not come back." She nodded. "If that is your choice." "It is your choice," he corrected. Elise tied her shawl tighter as night settled. She did not look back at the cafe windows when she stepped out. The street air felt cold against her cheeks, and the city's noise felt louder without the cafe's walls. She walked, not quickly enough to appear frightened, not slowly enough to appear indecisive. The address on the card led her away from familiar streets and into a neighborhood where the sidewalks seemed cleaner, and the lamps seemed placed with intention. She kept her eyes forward. When a man in a fine coat glanced at her, she did not shrink. She reminded herself that she had not stolen anything. She had not lied. She had not begged. Still, each step felt like crossing a border no one had invited her to cross. The house at the address was not a palace, yet it stood with a quiet confidence that made Elise stop at the gate and swallow. A servant opened it before she could knock twice, as though her arrival had been measured. He looked her up and down without bothering to hide it. "Yes?" Elise held her chin level. "My name is Elise Moreau. I was told to come." "By whom?" the servant asked, though his tone suggested he knew. "Prince Henri de Valois," she said. The servant's expression tightened, and his eyes flicked to her shoes, then back to her face. "Wait." He disappeared. Elise stood at the threshold, aware of the silence behind the gate. It was not the silence of poverty that comes from empty rooms. It was the silence of wealth that comes from thick walls. After a moment, the servant returned. "Enter." Elise stepped inside. The path to the front door was short but felt long. She wondered if she should wipe her feet, then decided that wiping them too obviously would be its own confession. Inside, a second servant met her, a woman with a smooth face and a posture like a rule. "This way," the woman said. Elise followed, passing through a corridor where even the air smelled disciplined. She wanted to look at everything, but she forced her eyes to stay at a respectful angle, as if curiosity could be mistaken for greed. The servant stopped at a door and opened it. "Wait here." The room beyond was neat, meant for visitors who did not belong. A few chairs, a small table, no warmth, no comfort meant to invite someone to stay. Elise stood instead of sitting. She listened. Voices drifted from elsewhere, distant and muffled. A woman's laugh, a man's low reply. Then footsteps approached. The door opened. A woman entered first. She was not old, but she carried age like a weapon, the authority of someone who had never been questioned. Her dress was simple in the way that required money to be simple. Her eyes were sharp. Behind her, two other ladies hovered, smiling as if they had been taught that smiling was always safer than truth. The first woman studied Elise as though reading a bill. "You are the girl from the café," she said. Elise held herself still. "Yes, madame." The woman's head tilted. "Do you know who I am?" "No, madame." A faint curve touched her mouth. "Honest. How refreshing." One of the ladies beside her whispered, not softly enough, "Or how convenient." The first woman lifted a finger, silencing the whisper without looking. "I am the Duchesse de Rouvray," she said. "You will address me accordingly." Elise inclined her head. "Yes, Your Grace." The Duchess's eyes narrowed a fraction, as if surprised Elise had known the correct form. "You may sit," the Duchess said, gesturing at a chair. Elise sat slowly, keeping her back straight. She folded her hands in her lap to keep them from trembling. The Duchess sat across from her. The other ladies remained standing behind, like decorations that could speak. "So," the Duchess began, "you paid for Madame Sabine's coffee?" "Yes, Your Grace." "How noble," the Duchess said lightly. "And how unusual. In your position." Elise kept her gaze on the Duchess's face. "In my position, we understand hunger." One of the ladies smiled as if amused. "How poetic." Elise did not respond. The Duchess leaned forward slightly. "Tell me, Elise Moreau, did you recognize Madame Sabine?" "No, Your Grace." "Did she tell you who she was?" "She told me her name," Elise said carefully. "Sabine." The Duchess's eyes gleamed. "Only Sabine?" "Yes." "Did she tell you anything else?" the Duchess asked. "She told me not to let people make me believe I am small," Elise replied, before she could stop herself. A small pause fell. Then the ladies behind the Duchess laughed softly, as if they had been given a charming line in a play. "How dramatic," one said. "Working girls are always dramatic," said the other. Elise felt her cheeks warm, but she kept her voice steady. It did not sound dramatic, it sounded tired. The Duchess watched her as if deciding whether to be offended. "Tired," she repeated. "Yes. Some people grow tired when they have lived too long with consequences." Elise's throat tightened. "Your Grace, I do not understand why I'm here." The Duchess leaned back, folding her hands. "Of course you do not, that is the point." Elise's fingers curled in her lap. "Then perhaps someone should explain." A second door opened behind the Duchess. The room shifted in an instant like a curtain pulled. Prince Henri entered. He did not look at Elise at first. His gaze went to the Duchess, then to the other women, then to the servant near the door, as if confirming who was present and what shape the evening had taken. Only then did his eyes settle on Elise, briefly, like a touch that withdrew. Elise's heart reacted anyway. She hated that it did. "Your Highness?" the Duchess said, rising smoothly. The ladies dipped into curtsies with rehearsed grace. Henri nodded once, barely. "Your Grace." He did not greet Elise. He did not smile. He did not soften. The coldness of it stung more than she expected. The Duchess gestured toward Elise as though presenting an object. "Here she is, precisely as described." Henri's expression did not change. "So, I see." Elise clenched her hands tighter. She forced herself to speak. "Your Highness." Henri glanced at her, then looked away again, addressing the Duchess. "Is Madame Sabine resting?" The Duchess's smile remained, but it thinned. "Madame Sabine is unwell. She has been fatigued. She was well enough to go to a café alone," Elise said quietly. The Duchess turned her head slowly toward Elise, her eyes bright with contained warning. "And you were well enough to interfere." Elise held her gaze. "I did not interfere. I paid for coffee." Henri's jaw tightened a fraction. He spoke to the Duchess without looking at Elise. "I asked that she be treated with respect." "She is being treated with as much respect as her situation allows," the Duchess replied sweetly. Elise felt something sharp rise in her chest. Situation. As if poverty were a misbehavior. Henri moved to the side of the room, standing near a table. He kept distance as though he refused to let the scene become intimate. He seemed carved from restraint. The Duchess sat again, unhurried. "Elise Moreau, you will answer a few questions, and then you will return to your little life, if you are wise." Elise's voice remained calm, but her pulse hammered. "What questions, Your Grace?" The Duchess's eyes narrowed slightly, pleased. "Oh, you are not trembling as much as I expected." "I have carried hot coffee through crowded rooms," Elise said. "Fear does not steady the hands." One of the ladies behind the Duchess made a small sound of disdain. "How very proud." Henri's eyes flicked briefly toward that lady. The movement was small, but it silenced her. Elise noticed. The noticing made her angrier. The Duchess's voice continued, smooth as satin. "When you paid, did you speak of money?" "No, Your Grace." "Did you offer her anything else?" the Duchess asked. "No." "Did you invite her to return?" the Duchess pressed. Elise hesitated. "Yes. I said I hoped she would return." The Duchess smiled as if she had caught a thread. "Ah, so you invited her." "I invited her to drink coffee," Elise said, "not to cause whatever this is." The Duchess's eyes hardened. "Do not pretend innocence is the same as ignorance." Elise's throat tightened. "Your Grace, I truly do not know what you believe I have done." The Duchess leaned forward. "A woman like Madame Sabine does not appear in a café by accident. A woman like Madame Sabine does not offer her name to strangers unless there is reason. So tell me, Elise Moreau, what reason did you give her to attach herself to you?" Elise felt Henri's presence, silent, watching. She lifted her chin. "None. I treated her like a person." The Duchess's smile returned, faint and cruel. "How revolutionary," one of the ladies murmured. "It is fashionable now to play at virtue." Elise looked toward Henri despite herself. He remained still, his expression unreadable. If he defended her, it would be publicly. If he rejected her, it would be publicly. Either way, she would be crushed. He said nothing. The silence felt like a wall. The Duchess turned her head toward Henri. "You see, Your Highness, she speaks well. A talent, certainly. Henri's voice was level. She speaks plainly. Plainly, the Duchess repeated, as if tasting something unpleasant. Then she turned back to Elise. Madame Sabine is in a delicate condition. She is easily influenced. Elise's eyes widened. Influenced? The Duchess nodded, as if explaining something to a child. Old people become sentimental. They attach themselves to anyone who offers a coin. Elise's hands clenched. I did not offer a coin for attachment. I offered it for dignity. The Duchess's eyes flashed. You will not lecture me on dignity. Elise swallowed, forcing herself to lower her gaze for a moment, then raise it again. Forgive me, Your Grace. Henri moved then, a step closer, but still not near Elise. He addressed the Duchess. This can end quickly. She will sign the statement and leave. Elise's head turned sharply. Statement? The Duchess's smile became bright again. Yes, child. A simple statement. You will affirm that you have no connection to Madame Sabine, that you have not spoken to her of private matters, and that you will not discuss this evening or this house with anyone. Elise stared. You want me to swear silence? We want you to protect yourself, the Duchess said, voice gentle. Paris is unkind to girls who imagine themselves noticed. Elise heard the warning beneath the sweetness. She turned her gaze to Henri. Is that why you brought me here? To make me sign something? Henri's eyes met hers briefly. The coldness remained, but something in his gaze tightened. Sign it, he said, not unkindly but firmly. It is a protection. It is a cage, Elise replied quietly. Henri's jaw tightened. He looked away again as if refusing to let the room see a crack in him. It is necessary. The Duchess's smile widened. You see? Even His Highness agrees. You may feel honored. Elise felt heat behind her eyes. She refused to let it spill. What happens if I do not sign? She asked, keeping her voice calm. The Duchess's eyes softened in feigned pity. Then your employer will hear that you have been indiscreet. Your landlord will hear that you have drawn attention. Your neighbors will hear that you have ambitions above your station. And Paris will do what Paris does. Elise's throat tightened. You mean you will ruin me? We will allow consequences to find you, the Duchess corrected smoothly. Elise looked toward Henri again. And you will allow it? Henri's face remained still. When he spoke, his voice was low. Do not challenge me in this room. The words struck her, not for their meaning, but for their restraint. He was not threatening. He was warning. Elise forced herself to breathe. The Duchess gestured and a servant approached with paper and pen on a small tray. The servant set it down before Elise like a judge laying out a sentence. Elise looked at the pen. It was ordinary, yet it seemed to weigh more than any tray she had ever carried. One of the ladies leaned closer behind the Duchess, whispering just loud enough for Elise to hear. She will sign. They always sign when they realize the world can close. The other lady replied, or she will cry first. That is usually the entertainment. Elise's hands remained still. She heard herself ask, May I see Madame Sabine? The Duchess's smile thinned. No. Elise's voice sharpened despite her effort. Why not? Henri spoke before the Duchess could. Because she is resting. Elise looked at him. Was she resting when she sat alone in my café? Henri's eyes held hers a moment longer than before. The room felt suddenly too aware. The Duchess cleared her throat. Enough. The girl is not here to interrogate. She is here to comply. Elise lowered her gaze to the paper. The statement was written in elegant phrases that felt like silk hiding rope. It insisted she had no connection, no knowledge, no right to speak. Her fingers hovered over the pen. Her mind flashed to Monsieur le Duc's face, hard and triumphant, to the tiny room upstairs above the café where she slept, to the coins she had left on the elderly woman's table and how light her pocket had felt afterward. She could sign and return to her life, smaller but intact. Or she could refuse and watch the world press down until she could not breathe. Her fingers closed around the pen. At that instant, the door opened and a servant hurried in, cheeks pale, leaning close to the Duchess to whisper. And Elise saw the Duchess's smile vanish as the servant breathed that Madame Sabine had disappeared from her room, leaving only a small locket behind and Elise's name written on a slip of paper beside it. For a moment no one moved. The pen remained between Elise's fingers, but her hand had gone cold. Far across from her, the Duchesse de Rouvray stared at the servant, as if she could force the words back into his mouth. "What do you mean, disappeared?" the Duchess asked, still quiet, still polite, and yet the room tightened around the sound. The servant swallowed. "Her room is empty, Your Grace. The window is closed, the corridor was watched, but she is not there." One of the ladies behind the Duchess lifted a hand to her throat. "How can an old woman vanish?" The servant lowered his eyes. "She left something behind." The Duchess's gaze snapped. "What?" "A locket," he said, "and a paper." The Duchess's voice sharpened. "Bring it." The servant hurried out, and the air in the room changed. The Duchess turned her head slowly toward Elise, as if the disappearance had created a new shape in the conversation, and that shape needed a culprit. Elise set the pen down carefully. "Your Grace, I have not left this room." The Duchess did not blink. "No, you have only entered it." One of the ladies murmured, "This is what happens when strangers are allowed near the weak." Henri's voice cut in, low and controlled. "Enough." The Duchess looked at him. "Your Highness, you see what I must manage." Henri did not raise his voice. He did not need to. "You must manage your household. You will not manage this girl with insinuations." The Duchess's mouth curved faintly. "Insinuations? I'm asking questions." "You are assigning guilt," Henri replied. Elise's chest tightened. She was grateful, and she hated that she was grateful. The door opened again. The servant returned with the locket in his palm and a small slip of paper pinched between two fingers as though it might stain him. He offered them to the Duchess. The Duchess took the paper first. Her eyes flicked over it. Her face remained composed, but something in her gaze tightened. Then she looked at the locket. It was not expensive at first glance. It was worn, but it was cared for, and the clasp looked as though it had been opened and closed many times by hands that could not let it go. The Duchess held it out toward Henri. "Look." Henri took it without hesitation. He did not open it. He simply held it, as if feeling the weight of something he had tried to forget. Elise's breath caught. Henri looked at the paper again. His eyes moved once across it, and his jaw tightened slightly. "What does it say?" Elise asked before she could stop herself. The Duchess turned to her with a smile that was all warning. "It says your name, child." Elise's stomach dropped. "My name?" Henri's gaze lifted and met hers, brief and sharp. He did not deny it. One of the ladies behind the Duchess let out a soft laugh. "How clever. A poor waitress leaves an impression, and now she has a locket and a scandal." Elise felt heat rise in her face. "I did not take anything." The Duchess's voice was smooth. "No one said you took it. Yet. But you see how quickly the world begins to speak." Henri's fingers tightened around the locket. "We will find her." The Duchess's tone hardened. "In the meantime, this girl stays here." Elise stared. "I stay here?" "Yes," the Duchess said. "If Madame Sabine has wandered into trouble, we must know with whom she spoke, with whom she aligned herself, with whom she plotted." Elise's mouth opened, then closed. She forced herself to breathe. There was no plot. "I served coffee." The Duchess's eyes narrowed. "You served attention." Henri took one step forward. "Your Grace." The Duchess lifted her chin. "Your Highness, you brought her into this house. Do not pretend she is not now part of what happens." Henri held the locket up slightly, letting the lamplight touch its worn surface. "This belongs to Madame Sabine. It will not be used as a prop in your games." The Duchess smiled faintly. "If you call caution a game, then yes, I am cautious." Henri turned his head toward Elise. "Come." Elise blinked. "Where?" "Not here," he said, and the words were clipped, not unkind, but urgent. The Duchess's smile disappeared. "Your Highness, I will not have private conversations." Henri's gaze fixed on her, and the room seemed to shrink around it. "You will have what I allow." The Duchess inhaled, slow, controlled, "As you wish." Henri did not wait for her to recover her composure. He walked to the door, and Elise rose quickly, her chair scraping too loudly. One of the ladies whispered, "She is being favored." The other whispered back, "Or being used." Elise followed Henri into the corridor. The servant shut the door behind them, and the sound felt like a boundary. Henri walked without looking back. Elise hurried to keep pace, her steps quieter than her heart. He stopped at a small study. He opened the door, stepped inside, and waited until she entered. Then he shut the door. The silence was immediate, not the Duchess's polite silence, a different kind, one that did not pretend. Henri set the locket on the desk. Elise stared at it. "That is hers." "Yes," Henri said. "She left it," Elise whispered, as if it were a message. Henri's mouth tightened. "It is." Elise lifted her gaze to him. "Your Highness, why is my name on her paper?" Henri did not answer at once. He looked at her as if weighing how much truth she could carry without breaking. "Because she trusts you," he said finally. Elise's voice rose despite herself. "She met me for a few minutes." Henri's eyes did not waver. "That is sometimes enough." Elise swallowed hard. "Then tell me what you have not told me. Why does her trust matter so much?" Henri's jaw tightened. "Because she is not merely an old woman who wandered into a café." "I know that now," Elise said. "The Duchess made sure I understood." Henri leaned forward slightly, hands resting on the edge of the desk. "Listen to me. There are people in that room who will take your smallest gesture and turn it into a weapon against you." Elise's hands clenched. "They already have." Henri's gaze stayed fixed on hers. "And if you give them anger, they will call it insolence. If you give them tears, they will call it guilt. If you give them silence, they will call it cunning." Elise breathed in, then out. "So, what do I give them?" Henri's voice lowered. "Nothing." Elise stared. "Nothing?" "You keep your answers simple," he said. "You do not invent stories to please them, and you do not let them isolate you from me in public." Elise felt the sting of it. "You isolated yourself from me in public." Henri's expression tightened just slightly. "I did what was necessary." "It felt like abandonment," Elise said, and she hated that her voice shook. Henri held her gaze, and for a heartbeat the coldness did not look like superiority. It looked like restraint. "You were safer if I seemed indifferent," he said. "Safer," Elise repeated. "I was seated like an accused person." Henri's jaw flexed. "If they believe I care, they will use you to injure me." Elise's throat tightened. "And if they believe you do not care, they will injure me because they can." Henri did not deny it. The silence was answer enough. Elise took a slow breath. "Then why bring me at all?" Henri's eyes flicked to the locket. "Because Madame Sabine demanded it." "Demanded?" Elise echoed. Henri's voice turned flatter. "She sent word to me after she left your café." Elise blinked, startled. How could she send word so quickly? Henri did not answer the practical question. He spoke as if it were irrelevant beside the moral one. "She said there was a girl at the café who paid without seeking applause. She said she recognized something she had not seen in years." Elise's chest tightened. "What?" Henri hesitated. "Conscience." Elise's eyes burned. She forced herself to blink normally. "Then why is she missing?" Henri's gaze hardened. "Because someone is watching her too closely. Because her voice is inconvenient." Elise swallowed. "And my name is now tied to hers." Henri nodded once. "Yes." Elise heard herself speak, quiet but firm. "You brought me into your world, and your world calls me dishonest. If you do not correct it, Your Highness, then you are using me." Henri's eyes narrowed. Not in anger. In something like surprise that she had said it aloud. "You are bold," he said. "I am tired," Elise replied. A pause. Henri's voice softened by a fraction. "Do you regret paying?" Elise shook her head once. "No." Henri studied her. "Then you will endure what follows." Elise's hands tightened. "I did not agree to be punished." Henri's gaze held hers. Neither did she. Elise's breath caught. "Who?" Henri's eyes flicked down, then back up. "Someone in my family's past." Elise felt the air change again. "Past," she repeated, cautious. Henri's mouth tightened. "There is a letter." Elise's heart thudded. "A letter from Madame Sabine." Henri nodded. "Sealed. Left in her keeping for many years." "And you want me to—" "What?" Elise asked. "Witness it?" Henri's voice was controlled. "She believes your presence will prevent it from being buried again." Elise felt her stomach twist. Why would a letter need preventing from being buried? Henri's gaze turned distant for a moment, as if he saw a corridor that led far beyond this house. Because some truths are inconvenient to those who live comfortably, Elise's voice rose, sharp with frustration. You speak in riddles. Henri's eyes snapped back to her. Because if I speak plainly in this house, walls will learn the words. Elise swallowed. Then why trust me with it at all? Henri leaned forward slightly. Because you have no reason to protect the lies of my world. Elise stared at him. And you do? Henri's face went still. I have a duty. And does your duty include letting people like the Duchess twist and threaten? Elise asked. Henri's jaw tightened. My duty includes keeping the fragile from shattering. Elise laughed once, short and bitter, then immediately regretted it. Fragile. Is that what you call the pride of a duchess? Henri's gaze sharpened. Not her. The crown. Elise froze. The word landed between them like a weight. Henri held her gaze. You do not yet understand what you have stepped near. Elise's voice dropped. Then step away from me. Send me back. Henri's expression tightened. It is too late for that. The door opened suddenly. Henri turned. Elise's pulse jumped. A servant stood there, breath slightly quick. Your Highness, we have found her. Henri's shoulders eased by a fraction. Where? In the small salon near the rear stair, the servant said. She insisted she wished to sit without being watched. She is exhausted, but she is clear. Henri moved immediately. Elise followed before she could think about whether she was allowed. They reached the salon quickly. Two servants hovered outside it with anxious faces. Henri entered first. Elise stepped in behind him. Madame Sabine sat in a chair near a table. Her posture was still proud, but her hands trembled slightly as they rested in her lap. She looked up when Henri entered, and something passed between them that Elise could not name. Not affection, not fear. Something older. Henri's voice was quiet. Madame Sabine. Madame Sabine's gaze held his. Henri. Elise's breath caught at the simplicity of it. She had said his title. The Duchess had said his title. But this old woman said his name as if it belonged to her memory. Henri moved closer. You should not have left your room. Madame Sabine's mouth tightened. Should not. Always should not. Should not speak, should not move, should not remember. Henri's jaw tightened. They were searching. They were accusing, Madame Sabine corrected. Her gaze flicked to Elise. And you were sitting in their web. Elise stepped forward, unable to help herself. Madame, I did not know. Madame Sabine lifted a trembling hand. No apologies. Henri's voice was low. Why did you leave a locket and her name? Madame Sabine's eyes narrowed. Because they would search my room. Because they would want something to hold and call proof. Henri's gaze sharpened. So you gave them bait. Madame Sabine's mouth curved faintly. So they would show their teeth. Henri's posture tightened. You cannot keep doing this. Madame Sabine leaned back slightly, her breath shallow but steady. I can do what I must while I can still do it. Henri's eyes darkened. You are unwell. I am old, she replied. Do not dress it in softer clothing. Elise stood still, hands clenched, feeling like a witness to something sacred and dangerous. Madame Sabine looked at Elise again. Did they force you to sign? Elise shook her head. Not yet. Madame Sabine's gaze hardened. Do not. Henri turned sharply. Madame Sabine. Madame Sabine did not look at him. She kept her eyes on Elise. You paid for my coffee without a performance. Do not begin performing now to please them. Elise swallowed. They threatened my life. Madame Sabine's eyes softened. No, they threatened your comfort, your job, your name. They threaten what they think you cannot live without. Elise's voice shook. Those are not small things. No, Madame Sabine said gently. But neither are you. Henri's jaw tightened at the echo of the words. He looked away for a moment, then back. Madame Sabine reached slowly into her pocket. She drew out something and held it out toward Elise. It was the locket. Elise stared, but they said it was left behind. Madame Sabine's mouth tightened with faint satisfaction. I left one behind, not this one. Elise's hands moved hesitantly. Madame, take it, Madame Sabine said. Elise glanced at Henri, uncertain. Henri's gaze fixed on the locket. Madame Sabine. Madame Sabine's eyes flashed. Do not argue. You have argued with me for years by doing nothing. Henri went still. Elise took the locket carefully. It felt warmer than it should, as if it had been held tight for a long time. Madame Sabine's hand covered Elise's fingers for a moment. Her skin was thin, but the grip was firm. "Do not give it to anyone," Madame Sabine said. "Not to servants, not to ladies with sweet voices, not to men who will pretend kindness to loosen your hand." Elise swallowed. "Not even to Your Highness?" Madame Sabine's eyes flicked briefly toward Henri, then returned to Elise. "Not yet." Henri's voice was controlled. "Madame Sabine." Madame Sabine lifted her chin. "She will give it to you when she has heard the whole truth." Elise's breath caught. "The whole truth?" Madame Sabine nodded. "Yes, in a room without listeners." Henri's eyes tightened. "Why involve her?" Madame Sabine's gaze sharpened. "Because you are surrounded by people who have trained you to accept silence as duty. She has not been trained. She will not confuse obedience with honor." Elise's chest tightened, and she looked down at the locket to hide the sting in her eyes. Henri spoke low. "You are placing her in danger." Madame Sabine's voice softened. "You placed her there when you walked into her café." Henri went still again. Madame Sabine sighed, then forced steadiness into her voice. "Now listen. They will not stop. The Duchess will press. She will make a story. She will smear. She will offer coins to people who think coins are truth." Elise's stomach tightened. "Monsieur le Duc," she whispered. Madame Sabine's eyes narrowed. "Yes, men like him." Henri's gaze moved to Elise, brief and sharp. "You must be careful." Elise lifted her head. "I have been careful all my life." Henri's expression softened by a fraction, and the fraction startled her more than any grand gesture would have. Madame Sabine's voice turned firm again. "You will leave this house tonight, Elise, and you will say nothing. You will keep your chin high. And you will not sign their paper." Elise's throat tightened. "And if they ruin me?" Madame Sabine's gaze held hers. "Then you will learn what kind of freedom ruins can hide." Henri's jaw tightened. "This is not a lesson." "It is," Madame Sabine replied, "whether you like it or not." Henri's voice dropped. "I will arrange for her safety." Madame Sabine's eyes turned sharp. "Do not arrange her like furniture." Henri stiffened. Elise stepped forward, unable to bear the tension without speaking. "Please, both of you. I did not ask for this, but I am in it now. Tell me what you want from me." Henri looked at her, and for once he did not look through her or past her. He looked as if he saw her as a person who had the right to ask. "I want you to hold your ground," he said quietly. Madame Sabine nodded. "And I want you to keep your heart clean while you do it." Elise's fingers tightened around the locket. "What happens next?" Henri's gaze shifted toward the corridor, as if he could already hear the Duchess's impatience approaching. "Next, you will return to your café as if nothing has happened." Elise let out a short, disbelieving breath. "As if nothing has happened." Henri's mouth tightened. "And tomorrow," he added lower, "I will speak to you again, away from her." Madame Sabine's eyes narrowed. "Do not delay, Henri." Henri's jaw flexed. "I will not." Elise looked at Madame Sabine. "Will you be safe here?" Madame Sabine's mouth curved faintly. "Safe is a word the powerful use when they mean contained." Elise swallowed. Henri's voice was firm. "She will be watched." Madame Sabine's gaze sharpened. "She will be caged." Henri did not deny it. He simply said, "It is temporary." Madame Sabine's eyes softened slightly, and she squeezed Elise's hand once more. "Go, child, before their sweetness turns to pressure." Elise nodded. "Yes, madame." Henri gestured, and a servant appeared as if summoned by the movement alone. "Escort her quietly," Henri said. The servant bowed. "Yes, Your Highness." Elise hesitated, then looked at Henri. "Your Highness, in that room, you were cold." Henri held her gaze. "I know. Do not be cold tomorrow," Elise said, surprised by her own courage. "I will not survive it." Henri's eyes tightened. Then he said quietly, "Then survive tonight." Elise turned away before her face could betray her. The servant led her through a side corridor. She was brought out by a lesser door, not the one meant for guests, as if even her departure had to be hidden. The street felt louder, rougher, more alive. Elise pulled her shawl close, and walked with the locket tucked beneath it. Each step back toward her neighborhood felt like descending into a familiar world that might no longer accept her. When she reached the cafe, the windows were dark. The door was locked. A paper was pinned to it. Elise stepped closer, heart pounding, and read her name in rigid ink above the words that ended her employment for misconduct reported by distinguished sources. And when she turned, Monsieur le Duc was there in the shadow of the doorway, murmuring that the Duchess had offered him compensation if Elise disappeared from Paris by morning. Monsieur le Duc stood with his shoulders tucked in, as if the night itself might accuse him. He kept his voice soft. "You look surprised, Elise. You should not. This is how the world works." Elise stared at the notice pinned to the cafe door. Her name looked strange on paper, as if it belonged to someone else. She read the words again, hoping they would change. Misconduct, distinguished sources, terminated. She turned slowly. "You wrote this?" Monsieur le Duc spread his hands. "I pinned it. I did not write it." "You allowed it," she said. He sighed, as if she were exhausting him. "I was approached." "By the Duchess," Elise replied. He hesitated, and that was answer enough. "She sent someone," he admitted, "a man with clean gloves and a clean smile. He said your evening has caused concern." "My evening," Elise echoed. "I was summoned like a servant, questioned like a criminal, and now dismissed like a stain." Monsieur le Duc's eyes flicked away. "You should have stayed quiet." Elise's voice sharpened. "I was quiet my whole life. It did not feed me." He stepped closer, lowering his voice further. "Listen, they offered me compensation, more than I make in a month." "For what?" Elise asked, though she already knew. "For you," he said. "For you to be gone. Not dead, girl. Do not look at me like that. Just gone. Out of Paris. Far enough that no one hears your name again." Elise's throat tightened. "And you would accept?" "I would accept peace," he snapped, and then reined himself in. "I would accept not being dragged into the games of people with crests." "They are already dragging you," Elise said. "So you are just letting them hold the rope." His jaw worked. "You have no family here to protect you, no patron, no respectable husband. Do you know what it means when a duchess decides you are inconvenient?" "It means she thinks I can be moved like a chair," Elise replied. Monsieur le Duc shrugged, helpless and angry. "Then move. Leave tonight. I will even give you a little money to help you travel." Elise stared at him. "Money from them." "Money is money," he said harshly. "It does not smell." "It does," Elise said, her voice steady. "It smells like someone else's fear." He scowled. "You are stubborn." Elise took a slow breath. The locket pressed lightly under her shawl, warm against her skin. She touched it with 2 fingers, just to remind herself it was real. "I will not disappear," she said. Monsieur le Duc's face hardened. "Then you are no longer welcome here." "I was never welcome," Elise replied quietly. "I was useful." He flinched, as if struck, then recovered. "You are making a mistake." "Perhaps," she said, "but it will be mine." Monsieur le Duc looked at her a long moment. His tone softened, but not kindly. "They will destroy you, Elise." Elise lifted her chin. "Then let them try while I am standing." He exhaled sharply. "Where will you go?" Elise's hand slid into her pocket and closed around the card Prince Henri had given her. "To the person who started this." Monsieur le Duc's eyes widened. "You will go back there?" "Yes," she said. He made a small noise of disbelief. "You will walk into their house with nothing and demand justice?" "I will walk into their house with truth," Elise replied. "And if they throw you out?" he pressed. "Then I will be out," Elise said, "but I will not be erased in silence." Monsieur le Duc stepped aside as if her stubbornness disgusted him. "Go then, and do not return begging." Elise looked once at the dark cafe window. She thought of the mornings she had arrived before dawn, the nights she had scrubbed until her hands cracked, the way Monsieur le Duc had always acted as though her labor were charity he provided. Then she turned away. Her feet carried her through streets that felt less friendly than they had that morning. She kept her pace even, refusing to hurry like a fugitive. The city did not part for her. People brushed past without looking, as if she were invisible again, and yet she felt exposed. When she reached the gate of the house, the same servant opened it too quickly. He looked startled to see her. "You again?" he said. Elise held her chin level. I must speak with Prince Henri. The servant's mouth tightened. You cannot simply arrive. I can, Elise said. I have done it. He stared at her shawl, her plain dress, her tired eyes. Wait. He vanished. Elise stood at the gate with her hands folded, forcing herself not to fidget. Her heart beat hard, but she would not let it be heard in her voice. The servant returned. His tone was grudging. Enter. Inside, she was guided not to the waiting room, but to the small study where she had stood before. She recognized the desk, the neatness that felt like a warning. Prince Henri was there. He stood near the window, hands behind his back, posture straight as a vow. When he turned, his expression changed only slightly, but she felt it. You returned, he said. Elise did not curtsy. She did not forget respect, but she refused to perform fear. She inclined her head. Your Highness. His gaze went to her face, then down briefly, as if noticing the absence of an apron. They dismissed you. They terminated me, Elise replied, and your Duchess offered my employer money to make me disappear. Henri's jaw tightened. She did. Elise's fingers curled. Is that your idea of protection? Henri's voice was controlled. No. Then what is your idea of protection? Elise asked. He stepped closer, stopping at a distance that felt deliberate. Tell me exactly what he said. Elise repeated Monsieur le Duc's words as closely as she could. While she spoke, Henri's face grew stiller, the way ice grows thicker when a cold wind refuses to stop. When she finished, Henri said, You should have gone somewhere safe. Elise let out a short breath. Safe, again with that word. Henri did not argue. Where is the locket? Elise's hand went to her shawl. She hesitated, then drew it out carefully and held it up. Here, Henri's eyes fixed on it. You did not give it to anyone. No, she said. Madame Sabine told me not to. Henri's gaze met hers. And you obeyed her instead of me. Elise's voice was calm. I obeyed my judgment. A pause. Henri nodded once, as if accepting the correction. Good. The single word unsettled her more than anger would have. Henri moved to the door and opened it. He spoke to someone outside in a low voice. A moment later, the female servant entered and dipped her head. Bring Madame Sabine, Henri said, and do not inform the Duchess yet. The servant's eyes widened slightly, then lowered. Yes, Your Highness. When she left, Henri closed the door. Elise held the locket with both hands now, as if it might slip away if she loosened her grip. If you are angry with the Duchess, she said, it will not fall on her. It will fall on me. Henri's gaze held hers. Not this time. That sounds like a promise, Elise replied. Henri's mouth tightened. It is a decision. Elise swallowed. And what about my job? Henri's eyes flicked to the locket. We will address it. Elise's shoulders stiffened. Do not offer me charity. Henri's gaze sharpened. Do not insult me by assuming I would. The words were stern, but there was something beneath them that made her pause. She spoke more carefully. Your Highness, I will not be placed somewhere like a decorative apology. Henri's jaw flexed. You will be placed nowhere you do not choose. Elise stared, uncertain whether to believe him. Before she could answer, the door opened again. Madame Sabine entered, supported lightly by the servant. She walked on her own feet, but the effort showed in the tightness around her mouth. Henri moved toward her immediately. You should be resting. Madame Sabine's eyes flashed. And you should be honest. We all should do what we should. Then her gaze found Elise and her expression softened. Child. Elise stepped forward. Madame. Madame Sabine looked at her carefully. You did not sign their paper. No, Elise said. And you did not disappear, Madame Sabine continued. No, Elise repeated. Madame Sabine nodded once. Good. Sit, both of you. I am tired of standing while others decide. Henri pulled out a chair for her without hesitation. Madame Sabine accepted it as if she had been accepting such gestures all her life. Elise remained standing a moment longer, then sat as well, hands still on the locket. Henri sat last, opposite Madame Sabine, posture rigid. Madame Sabine looked between them. Now, the letter. Henri's eyes narrowed slightly. It is late. It has been late for years, Madame Sabine replied. Elise's breath caught. There is truly a letter. Henri's gaze flicked to her. Yes. Madame Sabine tapped the desk with 2 fingers. Bring it. Henri did not move at once. His stillness felt like an argument held inside his chest. Then, slowly, he opened a drawer and removed an envelope sealed with old wax. The seal was cracked, as if it had been pressed too hard and then held too long. Elise leaned forward despite herself. Henri placed the letter on the desk but did not open it. He looked at Madame Sabine. You insisted she be here. Madame Sabine's voice was firm. Yes. Henri's gaze sharpened. Why? Madame Sabine did not flinch. Because when you read this, you will try to carry it alone, as you always do, and when you carry it alone, you begin to call silence noble. Henri's jaw tightened. Silence can be necessary. It can also be convenient, Madame Sabine replied. Then she looked at Elise. Child, you have no loyalty to their comfort. That is why you are needed. Elise's throat tightened. I do not want to harm anyone. Madame Sabine's eyes softened. Truth is not harm, it is correction. Henri's voice was low. Some corrections ruin people. Madame Sabine's gaze held his. Some people deserve ruin, but we are not here to seek ruin. We are here to stop a lie from being honored as tradition. Elise looked at Henri. What lie? Henri stared at the envelope as if it were a mirror he hated. A lie made to protect appearances. Madame Sabine nodded. A young woman was blamed for a mistake that was not hers. Elise's breath caught. Who? Madame Sabine did not say a name yet. She lifted her chin. Someone who served the royal household. Someone without the power to defend herself when those above her decided they needed a scapegoat. Henri's eyes darkened. Madame Sabine, do not try to stop me, she said sharply. Then her voice softened. Henri, you were a child when you first heard this. They taught you to freeze your face and call it duty. They taught you to swallow sympathy because sympathy could make you act. Elise's gaze flicked to Henri's face. She saw the truth of it in the tightness around his eyes. Madame Sabine continued, quieter now. They made an arrangement. They erased her name. They sent her away with a small payment and a warning. And they told everyone she had been improper. Elise's hands tightened around the locket. Improper, she repeated, disgusted. Henri's voice was flat. They protected the household from scandal? Madame Sabine's eyes flashed. They protected themselves. Elise looked between them. And the letter contains what? Henri finally placed his fingers on the envelope. It contains her account, her words, her signature, and a request. Madame Sabine's mouth tightened. A request for her name to be cleaned. Elise swallowed. Why has it not been done? Henri did not answer at once. When he did, his voice was controlled but strained. Because to admit the lie is to admit the court's cruelty. And because those who benefited from the lie do not wish to be seen. Madame Sabine looked at Elise. Do you see now why they fear voices like yours? Elise's throat tightened. Because I paid for coffee? Madame Sabine shook her head slightly. Because you did it without asking to be admired. The court understands admiration, it does not understand conscience. Henri's gaze snapped up. Enough, we will open it. He broke the remaining wax carefully. He unfolded the letter with steady hands that betrayed nothing. And yet Elise saw the faint tremor at his fingertips when the paper breathed open. Henri began to read aloud. The voice on the page was calm, precise, aching only in the spaces between words. It spoke of service, of accusation, of being told to confess to something she had not done for the good of the household. It spoke of being dismissed quietly, as though her life were a stain to be scrubbed away. It spoke of Madame Sabine, who had tried to defend her and had been ordered to fall silent. Elise listened with her hands clenched, rage and sorrow mixing, until she could not tell them apart. Henri read the final lines, his voice dropping lower. A request that when the time was right, someone with authority would say plainly that she had been wronged. Not to punish, not to humiliate, but to restore what was stolen, her name. Henri fell silent. Madame Sabine closed her eyes for a moment, as if hearing the words was both relief and pain. There, she whispered. Now you cannot pretend you have not held it. Henri stared at the paper. I have held it for years. And what have you done with it? Madame Sabine asked. Henri's voice was quiet. I ensured you were cared for. Madame Sabine opened her eyes. That was for me. Henri's jaw tightened. I tried to prevent further harm. Madame Sabine's gaze was unyielding. By doing nothing. Henri's shoulders rose with a controlled breath, then fell. When he spoke, the coldness was gone, replaced by something more dangerous. Honesty. I was afraid, he admitted. Elise's breath caught. Madame Sabine nodded once, accepting the confession, but not excusing it. Say it. Henri's eyes flicked to Elise, then back to Madame Sabine. I was afraid that if I spoke, I would shatter what is already fragile. Elise heard herself ask very softly, fragile for whom? Henri looked at her. This time he did not look away. For the crown, for the idea that the court is honorable. Elise's voice steadied. And is it honorable to let an innocent woman be erased? Henri's jaw tightened. No. Madame Sabine leaned forward. Then choose. Henri held the letter as if it weighed more than gold. Then he set it down on the desk and spoke with decision that felt like a door opening. I will correct it, he said. Madame Sabine exhaled, a small sound that might have been a laugh if her throat had been stronger. Good. Elise swallowed. How? Henri's voice became practical, clipped. There will be a statement within the proper circles. It will not be theatrical. It will be precise. It will restore her name and acknowledge wrongdoing without creating spectacle for those who would turn it into gossip. Madame Sabine's eyes narrowed. And the people who did it? Henri's expression tightened. Some are gone. Some remain. I cannot rewrite the past, but I can remove their right to claim virtue. Elise's chest tightened. And you truly can do this. Henri's gaze held hers. Yes. Madame Sabine watched him carefully. And the Duchess? Henri's mouth flattened. She will dislike it. She will fight it, Madame Sabine corrected. Henri's voice remained calm. Then she will discover that I am not a child anymore. Elise's hands loosened slightly around the locket. And what about me? Henri's gaze shifted to her, and for a moment something like regret moved in his eyes. Your employer will be instructed to pay you what you are owed. Elise lifted her chin. Instructed? Henri nodded once. He will not refuse. Elise's eyes narrowed. And my reputation, the notice on the door. Henri's jaw tightened. It will be removed. That will not stop people from talking, Elise said. Henri's voice was quiet. No, it will not. Madame Sabine interjected, brisk. People talk about the weather too. The weather does not decide your worth. Elise breathed in and out. I do not want to be hidden in your house. Henri's gaze sharpened. I did not offer that. I do not want coins thrown at me as if my silence is for sale. Elise continued. Henri's voice remained steady. I will not insult you with that. Elise hesitated, then said the fear that had been sitting in her throat since the café door. I do not want to be made into a rumor. Henri's expression softened by a fraction. Then we will make you into something else. Elise blinked. What does that mean? Henri looked at Madame Sabine briefly, as if confirming something with her without speaking. Then he looked back at Elise. It means I will not let you stand alone in a room where they think you are easy to crush. Elise's heart stuttered. You cannot stand beside every girl they crush. No, Henri admitted, but I can stand beside the one I brought into it. Madame Sabine's gaze was sharp, satisfied. Say it properly. Henri's jaw tightened. He turned fully to Elise, and for the first time his posture was not that of a prince addressing a subject. It was that of a man addressing a woman whose will he must respect. Elise Moreau, he said, I ask your permission to court you. Elise went still. Madame Sabine watched with bright eyes. The air in the room seemed to hold its breath. Elise's voice came out quieter than she intended. Court me. Henri nodded once. Formally, openly, with the intention of marriage if you choose it. Elise's fingers tightened on the locket again, not from fear this time, but from the shock of being asked rather than commanded. You barely know me, she said. Henri's gaze did not waver. I know what you did when no one was watching. Elise swallowed. That is not the same as knowing my heart. Henri's voice softened. Then let me earn the right to know it. Elise's throat tightened. She forced herself to speak plainly. because if she began to speak like the ladies, she would be lost. "If I accept," she said, "I do not become your ornament." Henri's eyes narrowed slightly. "Agreed. I do not stop being myself," she continued. "I do not stop caring about the women who scrub floors and count coins." Henri's voice was firm. "You will not stop. And I will not be asked to pretend your world is kind," Elise finished. A faint, almost invisible exhale left Henri, as if the honesty relieved him. "I would never ask you to lie for it," Madame Sabine nodded once. "Good." Elise looked at Henri. "And what do you want from me, truly?" Henri's gaze held hers. "Truth. The same thing you gave an old woman with a cup of coffee." Elise's eyes burned, but she blinked it back. "I can offer truth," she said. "I cannot offer obedience." Henri's mouth tightened, and this time the tightness looked like respect. "Then do not offer it." A quiet settled, not heavy but new. Madame Sabine reached for the locket. Elise hesitated, then placed it in her palm. Madame Sabine opened it with careful fingers. Inside was a small, faded portrait, the features softened by time, a young woman's face composed and sad. Madame Sabine closed it again and looked at Henri. "You will restore her name?" Henri nodded once. "Yes." Madame Sabine turned to Elise. "And you will not shrink?" Elise's voice was steady. "I will not." Henri stood. "Tonight you will not return to the café." Elise stiffened. "I told you I would not be hidden here." "You will not be hidden," Henri replied. "You will be a guest, in a room that locks from the inside, with a servant outside your door only if you request it." Elise narrowed her eyes. "That still sounds like protection." Henri held her gaze. "It sounds like rest," Madame Sabine added, brisk, "and it sounds like a place where you cannot be bullied into boarding a carriage to nowhere before dawn." Elise exhaled, defeated not by them, but by her own exhaustion. "One night," she said. Henri nodded. "One night. Tomorrow you may decide your next step, with options that are yours, not theirs." Elise hesitated. "Options?" Henri spoke evenly. "Work, if you wish, in a respectable establishment that will not dismiss you for a rumor. Training, if you prefer. Or you may return to your café if you truly desire it, but it will be on terms that do not allow a man like Le Duc to treat you like a coin he can spend." Elise's mouth tightened. "I never desire to return to him." "Then you will not," Henri said. Madame Sabine rose slowly, then steadied herself. "Now," she said, "I will sleep knowing I have heard the letter opened." Henri moved to support her, but she waved him off with a look. "Do not hover. Go and do what you promised." Henri nodded once. "I will." As the servant guided Madame Sabine out, Elise stood as well, suddenly aware of her own shaking knees. Henri looked at her. "You have nowhere to be tonight." Elise's voice was quiet. "I have myself." Henri's expression softened, just slightly. "Then keep yourself here where you can breathe." Elise held his gaze. "If I agree to be courted," she said, "I will not be grateful like a beggar." Henri's voice was low. "Be nothing like a beggar." Elise hesitated, then nodded once. "Very well." Henri rang quietly for a servant and gave instructions without fuss. A room would be prepared. Food would be offered but not forced. No one would enter without permission. Elise listened, half disbelieving that anyone would arrange her comfort with such careful respect. Before she left the study, she turned back. "Your Highness." Henri looked at her. She spoke the fear she had carried all evening. "If you turn cold again in public, I will not survive it." Henri's eyes tightened, and for the first time his voice sounded less like command and more like vow. "Then I will learn to be brave in a different way." Elise nodded, and when the servant led her to a quiet room and closed the door, she sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, listening to the house's calm, and for the first time in days, she let her shoulders drop without waiting for the next blow to fall. Morning arrived without permission. Elise woke in a bed that did not smell of coffee or damp stone. For a moment, she did not remember where she was. Then she remembered everything at once, and her heart began to pound as if the night had never ended. A knock came, soft and careful. "Enter," Elise said. The same female servant from the previous evening stepped in, eyes lowered in practiced respect. "Good morning, mademoiselle. Would you like tea?" Elise hesitated. "If I say no, will someone be offended?" The servant's mouth twitched, almost a smile. No, mademoiselle. Then yes, Elise said. And bread, if it is not too much. It is not too much, the servant replied, and left. Elise sat at the edge of the bed, hands clasped. She listened for sounds in the corridor, for gossip, for the click of heels that meant judgment. The house remained quiet, not empty quiet, controlled quiet. A second knock came. This one was firmer, though still polite. Elise rose. Enter. Prince Henri opened the door himself and stepped inside, closing it behind him. He wore a simple coat, no glittering signs of rank, and yet rank clung to him anyway. You slept, he said. It was not a question. Elise lifted her chin. I did. Henri nodded once, as if acknowledging an accomplishment. Good. Elise crossed her arms, not defensive, but steady. What happens now? Henri looked at her for a long moment. Now we stop letting others write the story. Elise's mouth tightened. They already wrote a notice with my name on it. I removed it at dawn, Henri said. Elise blinked. You went there? Yes. And Monsieur le Duc? She asked. Henri's voice remained calm. He will pay you what you are owed. Elise's eyes narrowed. Will he be punished? Henri paused a fraction. He will learn that selling a person's name is not a small act. He will not do it again. Elise swallowed. She wanted to feel satisfied. She felt instead a strange emptiness, as if justice could not refill what humiliation had drained. Henri watched her face. You do not seem relieved. Elise gave a short breath. Relief does not feed a woman when her neighbors whisper. Henri nodded once. Then we will address the whispering. How? Elise asked. Henri's gaze held hers. In public. Elise's stomach tightened. Public. Henri's jaw tightened as well, as if the word tasted bitter. Yes. A pause. Elise asked quietly, Is Madame Sabine awake? Henri's expression shifted, softer at the edges. She is. May I see her? Elise asked. Henri hesitated, then nodded. Yes, but first, you will eat. Elise almost laughed. You sound like a governess. Henri's mouth tightened, and for the first time she saw something like faint humor. It was quick, controlled, but real. You looked ready to faint yesterday. I do not intend to repeat it. I do not faint, Elise said. Henri lifted a brow. Then you will prove it by eating. Before she could argue, the servant returned with tea and bread. She placed it quietly and withdrew without a sound. Elise sat and broke the bread. Her hands shook slightly, and she hated that Henri saw it. He did not comment. He simply sat in a chair near the door, posture straight but not threatening, as if he had chosen to guard her dignity more than her body. As she ate, she asked, What do you mean in public? Henri's voice was even. There is a gathering this afternoon. Not a ball, a salon. The kind where people pretend they are discussing art while they measure each other's weaknesses. Elise swallowed a bite. And the Duchess will be there. Yes, Henri said. Elise set the bread down. So she will try to ruin me again. Henri's gaze sharpened. She will try. Elise's voice steadied. And you will stop her. Henri did not look away. Yes. Elise lifted her chin. Not by coldness. Henri's jaw tightened. Not by coldness. Elise studied him. You are nervous. Henri did not deny it. I am precise. That is not an answer, Elise said. Henri's mouth tightened. I am not used to placing my personal choices in front of others. Elise leaned forward slightly. Then why do it? Henri's gaze held hers. Because if I do it privately, they will call it shame. If I do it publicly, they will call it scandal. But only one of those can be met with honesty. Elise's throat tightened. And what are you placing in front of them? Henri's voice lowered. The letter's truth, Madame Sabine's honor, and my intention. Elise's fingers curled against the cup. Your intention? Henri nodded once. To court you openly. Elise's heart stumbled. At their salon? Yes. Elise set the cup down. That is not courage. That is asking for cruelty. Henri's gaze sharpened. Cruelty exists whether we invite it or not. The question is whether it rules the room. Elise breathed in slowly. Do I have a choice in this? Henri leaned forward slightly. Always. Elise stared at him. If I say no, will you still correct the lie? Yes, he said immediately. And if I say no, Elise continued, will you still stop her from turning me into a joke? Henri's eyes darkened. Yes. Elise swallowed. The answer unsettled her more than any flattery would have. Then, I will come. Henri's shoulders eased, almost imperceptibly. Thank you. Elise lifted her chin. Do not thank me like I am doing you a favor. I am doing this for myself. Henri nodded. Then I will be worthy of it. A small silence followed. It was not awkward, it was simply full. Elise finished her tea, then rose. Take me to Madame Sabine. Henri stood as well. Come. He led her through a corridor to a modest sitting room. Madame Sabine sat near the window, wrapped in a shawl. Her face looked pale, but her eyes were awake in the way that made people straighten without knowing why. When Elise entered, Madame Sabine lifted her chin. There is my stubborn child. Elise crossed the room quickly. Madame, how do you feel? Madame Sabine waved a hand, like an old kettle that has boiled too often. Sit. Are you fed? Elise glanced at Henri, then back. Yes. Good, Madame Sabine said briskly. Then you can fight. Elise blinked. Fight? Madame Sabine's mouth tightened. With your dignity, with your voice. Those are the only weapons a poor girl is allowed. And they are enough if she refuses to drop them. Henri's jaw tightened slightly at the word weapons, but he said nothing. Elise sat beside Madame Sabine. Henri says there will be a salon. Madame Sabine's eyes brightened. Ah, the stage. Elise's throat tightened. I am afraid. Madame Sabine looked at her sharply. Good. Fear keeps you awake. Just do not let it make you small. Henri spoke quietly. She will not stand alone. Madame Sabine looked at him. You will stand properly then. Henri's gaze held hers. Yes. Madame Sabine leaned back, studying him. Do you remember what you were told when you were a boy? Henri's face went still. Yes. What were you told? She pressed. Henri's voice was low. To smile when they praised me, to grow cold when they provoked me, and to never, ever let the court see what I wanted. Madame Sabine's eyes narrowed. And what do you want? Henri did not answer immediately. Elise's breath caught, waiting. Henri turned slightly toward Elise, then back to Madame Sabine. I want the truth to be honored, and I want her to be safe without being caged. Madame Sabine nodded once. Then you will have to become a nuisance to your own world. Henri's mouth tightened. So be it. Elise looked at Madame Sabine. Will you attend? Madame Sabine's eyes flashed. Of course. Henri's jaw flexed. It may exhaust you. Madame Sabine's tone turned sharp. So does living in silence. Elise reached for her hand. Then we will go together. Madame Sabine squeezed her fingers. Good. Later that afternoon, Elise stood in a room where mirrors made every movement feel doubled. A maid offered her a simple dress, not lavish but clean and well-fitted. No jewels, no attempt to disguise her origins with false grandeur. When the maid stepped back, Elise stared at herself. She looked like herself, only less tired. The maid spoke quietly. You may wear your hair as you prefer, mademoiselle. Elise's mouth tightened. What do they prefer? The maid's eyes flicked up, then down. They prefer whatever makes them comfortable. Elise nodded. Then I will wear it the way I always do. The maid hesitated, then gave a small, respectful nod. Very well. When Elise stepped into the hallway, Henri was waiting. He looked her over with the careful attention of a man trying not to stare. You look, he began. Elise lifted a hand. Do not say appropriate. Henri's mouth tightened, then softened. You look unbowed. Elise let out a slow breath. I am trying. Henri offered his arm, not grabbing, not insisting, just offering. Elise looked at it, then placed her hand lightly on his sleeve. His posture changed at once, not possessive, but protective in a way that felt like a choice rather than a claim. They entered the salon. Conversation continued, but it thinned, as if the air itself recognized an interruption. Faces turned, eyes assessed. Smiles appeared like masks chosen quickly. The Duchesse de Rouvray stood near a table of delicate cups, surrounded by admirers. When she saw Henri, her smile widened. When she saw Elise, her smile did not disappear. It simply changed. Your Highness, the Duchess purred, dipping into a curtsy. And how surprising. Henri's voice was calm. Your Grace. The Duchess's eyes flicked to Elise, as if she were a stain that had walked in on its own legs. Mademoiselle Moreau, is it? I did not expect to see you among us again. Elise felt her cheeks warm, but she kept her chin level. I did not expect to be invited into questions either, Your Grace. A soft ripple of sound moved through the room. Not laughter, not approval. Interest. The Duchess smiled. How direct. Henri's voice remained even. We have come to speak plainly. The Duchess's eyes gleamed. Plainly? In a salon? How bold. Henri did not blink. Yes. A gentleman nearby cleared his throat. Your Highness, we were just discussing the merits of... Henri lifted a hand, polite but decisive. In a moment, the room held its breath. Henri guided Elise and Madame Sabine forward. Madame Sabine walked without help, though Henri stayed close enough to offer a hand if needed. Elise kept her own steps steady, refusing to look at the floor. When some recognized Madame Sabine, their faces shifted. A few looked away as if her presence reminded them of something uncomfortable. The Duchess's smile faltered. Madame Sabine, how unexpected. Madame Sabine lifted her chin. Unexpected is what happens when people assume old women are too tired to speak. The Duchess's smile returned, thin. We worry for your health. Madame Sabine's eyes were sharp. Worry less. Listen more. A tense pause followed. Henri spoke, and his voice carried without force. I have an announcement. A murmur rose. It died quickly. Henri continued. There has been a wrong left uncorrected for many years. A woman who served the royal household was accused of misconduct she did not commit. Her name was erased to preserve appearances. The Duchess's face tightened. Your Highness, surely this is not the place. Henri turned his head slightly toward her. It is exactly the place. Silence fell, heavier now. Henri's gaze moved across the room, meeting eyes that wanted to avoid him. I have read her letter. I have seen her account, and I will not allow the court to continue honoring a lie as if it were propriety. A woman near the back whispered, He is speaking of that old matter. A man murmured, He cannot mean to expose... Henri raised his voice slightly. Not loud, but firm. I mean to correct it. The Duchess stepped forward with a smile that shook at the edges. Your Highness, you risk unsettling many delicate relationships. Henri's gaze was steady. Then they were built on something too weak to deserve protection. The Duchess's eyes flicked to Elise, sharp with accusation. And this is her influence, I assume. A waitress's conscience leading the crown by the nose. The room stiffened. Elise felt every gaze swing toward her like a door turning on its hinges. Her throat tightened. For a heartbeat, she wanted to shrink. Then she remembered the empty plate, the trembling hands, the old woman counting coins, as if each coin was shame. Elise spoke calm and clear. Your Grace, I did not lead anyone. I paid for coffee. The Duchess's smile widened, almost amused. How touching. And now you are here, on a prince's arm. One might assume your coin was an investment. A low ripple moved through the room. A few faces brightened with cruel curiosity. Elise felt her cheeks burn. She kept her hands still. If you assume that, she said, it is because you cannot imagine kindness without a price. The Duchess's smile froze. Someone inhaled sharply. Henri shifted, stepping closer to Elise, not in front of her, not behind her, beside her. His voice was calm, and it cut through the tension like clean thread. That is enough, Your Grace. The Duchess's eyes narrowed. Enough? I am merely speaking what others whisper. Henri's gaze held hers. Then let them learn to whisper about something else. He turned to the room again. The correction will be made in writing, with the appropriate seals. It will state plainly that the accusation was false. It will restore her name, and it will acknowledge that the household failed her. A man near the Duchess spoke carefully. Your Highness, this will invite talk. Henri nodded. Yes. The man pressed, and if talk becomes damaging, Henri's eyes remained steady. Then the damage was already there. Talk simply reveals it. Madame Sabine let out a soft breath, half relief. Finally, she murmured. The Duchess's voice turned sharp. Your Highness, you cannot govern by sentiment. Henri turned fully toward her. This is not sentiment. This is honor. The Duchess's eyes flicked to Elise again. And what of this girl? Are we to pretend she belongs in such matters? Elise opened her mouth, but Henri spoke first. She belongs wherever she stands with dignity, he said. A silence fell. Henri continued, voice measured. And since we are speaking plainly, there is a second announcement. The Duchess's smile returned, too quick. Ah, Henri's gaze moved to Elise. For a moment the room disappeared behind his eyes. Elise Moreau, he said, I asked your permission to court you. I now ask, before witnesses, that you accept my intention of marriage. The salon erupted in murmurs, immediate and uncontrolled. A woman gasped. A man muttered, Impossible. Another whispered, He cannot. Elise's heart hammered so hard she feared it would show through her chest. She felt heat in her face, not shame now, but the shock of being seen so completely. Henri did not look away from her. His voice was quiet, meant only for her, yet it carried. You said you would not be an ornament. I accept your terms. Will you accept me? Elise swallowed. Every part of her wanted to run, not from him, from the room, from the weight of what they would try to make of her. Then she remembered something else, how it felt to pay for coffee without needing applause, how it felt to be true even when truth was not rewarded. She lifted her chin. I will accept you, she said, voice steady, if you remain the man who chose truth today, not the man who hides behind coldness tomorrow. Henri's jaw tightened, as if emotion pressed against a wall inside him. Then I will remain. Elise nodded once. Yes. The word rang in her ears like the bell over a café door. Only this time, it opened something instead of warning her. Henri did not smile broadly. He simply exhaled as if he had been holding his breath for years. The Duchess stepped forward, face composed by force. Your Highness, you are making a spectacle. Henri's gaze turned to her, calm and unyielding. No, Your Grace. I am ending one. Madame Sabine spoke, voice clear despite the frailty in her body. A kingdom does not fall because a prince chooses honor. It falls when the powerful demand silence from the innocent. The room quieted again, but it was a different quiet now. Not obedient, listening. The Duchess's smile returned, brittle. We shall see how long this much warmth lasts. Henri's voice was mild. You will. He offered his arm to Elise again. She took it. Her hand trembled slightly, and Henri's sleeve felt steady beneath her fingers. As they moved away, whispers followed, but they no longer felt like knives. They felt like weather, passing over stone that refused to crack. Later, in a smaller room away from the crowd, Henri faced Elise, Madame Sabine seated nearby with a glass of water. Henri's voice was low. You were brave. Elise let out a breath. I thought I would faint. Henri's mouth tightened with faint humor. You did not. Elise looked at him. You stood beside me. Henri nodded. As I said. Elise's eyes narrowed. And the Duchess will not forgive this. Henri's gaze was steady. Then she will have to learn to live with disappointment. Madame Sabine sipped her water. Disappointment keeps the proud from growing too fat. Elise couldn't help it. A laugh escaped her, quick and surprised. Henri watched her with a softness that made her look away quickly, as if she feared the room would steal it. Madame Sabine set the glass down. Now, she said briskly, you will do the next thing properly. Elise blinked. What next thing? Madame Sabine looked at Henri. You will ask her again in private, not because she needs the performance, but because she deserves the intimacy of being chosen without witnesses. Henri's expression shifted, almost wary. Madame Sabine, do it, she said. Henri held Elise's gaze, then nodded once. He turned his head toward the servant at the door. Give us a moment. The servant withdrew. Henri stepped closer to Elise, not too close, close enough that she could see the faint strain in his composure. Elise, he said, and saying her name without title changed everything. Her breath caught. Henri. His eyes tightened at the sound, as if her voice touched a part of him the court had never been allowed to touch. I ask you again, he said, quieter. Not as a prince performing courage, as a man seeking a life he can respect. Will you marry me? Elise swallowed. She searched his face for arrogance, for pity, for possession. She found none of it. She found a disciplined man trying to become honest. Yes, she said. I will. Henri's hand lifted slowly, as if asking permission with the movement alone. Elise did not step back. His fingers touched her hand, gentle, careful. His thumb brushed once across her knuckles, and the small tenderness made her eyes sting. "You will not be trapped," he said. Elise's voice shook. "Then do not build a golden trap and call it love." Henri's gaze held hers. "I will build a door, and I will never lock it." Madame Sabine cleared her throat loudly. "If you are finished speaking like poets, you might consider arranging a date." Elise laughed again, and this time it felt like air after being underwater. The wedding did not wait for a season of gossip to soften. Henri refused delay. "If they are determined to talk," he said to Elise, "let them talk about a vow kept." The ceremony was simple by court standards. There were witnesses, yes, but fewer than the Duchess would have preferred. No parade. No spectacle to satisfy those who needed proof of hierarchy. Elise wore a modest dress. Her hands trembled only once when she stepped into the small chapel and heard the quiet gather around her like a held breath. Henri stood at the front, expression composed, but his eyes did not look cold now. They looked intent, as if he were anchoring himself to the sight of her. Madame Sabine sat in the first row, chin lifted, eyes bright. When Elise passed her, she whispered, "Do not look at the room. Look at the man." Elise did. When she reached Henri, he took her hands, steadying her without squeezing. The officiant spoke the traditional words. Henri answered with calm certainty. Elise answered with a voice that trembled once and then steadied, as if her own name had finally become something she could say without shame. When Henri placed the ring on her finger, his hand paused a fraction and his eyes met hers. "Still willing," he whispered. Elise's lips parted, and for a moment she could not speak. Then she nodded. More than willing, Henri exhaled, as if the world had finally loosened its grip. After the vows, when the words had been said and could not be unsaid, Madame Sabine rose with effort. The servant moved to help her, but she waved him away. "I will stand for this," she said, voice firm. Henri turned toward her. "Madame Sabine," she lifted a hand. "No, listen." The room quieted. Madame Sabine's gaze moved to Elise. "Child, you paid for coffee. That was your beginning." Elise's throat tightened. Madame Sabine looked at Henri. "And you paid a debt that was never yours alone by choosing the truth in front of those who trained you to hide." Henri's jaw tightened, emotion controlled but present. Madame Sabine smiled, small and real. "Now do not waste it. Do not let comfort make you forget the people who taught you endurance." Henri nodded once. "I will not." Elise whispered, "Neither will I." After the ceremony, they did not retreat into luxury and silence. Elise insisted on walking, briefly, through the street where her café stood. Not to punish herself, but to prove something to her own heart. Henri walked beside her without complaint, coat buttoned against the chill, posture calm. When they reached the café door, the notice was gone. The windows were still dark. Monsieur le Duc was inside, visible through the glass, moving like a man who feared his own reflection. He opened the door when he saw them, face pale. Elise stood still, hands clasped in front of her. She did not smile. She did not glare. Monsieur le Duc swallowed. "Mademoiselle, Your Highness, Elise's voice was calm. "Monsieur le Duc, you took my work and called it replaceable." He flushed. "I did what I had to do." Elise nodded once. "That is what everyone says when they choose cowardice." Monsieur le Duc's shoulders sagged. "I have your wages, all of them. And I am sorry." Elise studied him. "Do you understand why you should be sorry?" He hesitated. "Because I dismissed you." Elise shook her head. "Because you tried to sell my name." Monsieur le Duc looked down. "Yes?" Henri spoke then, voice even. "She will not return to your employment." Monsieur le Duc flinched as if struck, then nodded quickly. Of course," Elise added, "but you will keep this café." Monsieur le Duc looked up, startled. "I will?" Elise's gaze remained steady. "Yes, and you will offer fair wages to the girls who work here. You will not dock their pay for your own comforts, and you will treat every old woman who comes in as a person, not as a burden." Monsieur le Duc's mouth opened. "Mademoiselle, that is—" Henri's voice was mild. "It is possible," Monsieur le Duc swallowed. Yes. Elise stepped back. Good. Then consider it your penance. Monsieur le Duc's eyes widened. Penance? Elise nodded. A daily one. Much harder than words. Henri offered Elise his arm again. She took it. As they turned to leave, Madame Sabine approached slowly behind them, supported lightly by the servant. She looked up at the café, then at Elise. You did not seek revenge, Madame Sabine said quietly. Elise's voice softened. I sought freedom. Madame Sabine nodded. That is the better hunger. Henri glanced at Elise. We will begin the fund you spoke of. Elise blinked. You remember. Henri's mouth tightened with something near warmth. I remember what matters to you. Elise's throat tightened. It will help women find work. Henri nodded. Work, training, and a safe roof when the world turns cold. Elise exhaled slowly. Then let them talk. I will be busy. Henri's gaze held hers. So will I. Madame Sabine let out a quiet breath, satisfied. There. Two people finally using their positions properly. Elise looked at her. And you, Madame? What will you do now? Madame Sabine's eyes softened. I will rest. And I will sleep without hearing that girl's erased name echoing in my skull. Henri's voice dropped. You will be honored as well. Madame Sabine lifted her chin. Do not turn me into a statue. Let me be an old woman who lived long enough to see a lie corrected. Elise reached for her hand. You were not alone in the café, she whispered. You found me. Madame Sabine squeezed her fingers. And you found yourself. Henri and Elise walked on, leaving the café behind. The street did not bow. The lamps did not brighten. The city remained itself. Yet something in Elise's chest felt different, as if the air had finally made room for her lungs. Henri spoke quietly, as if afraid to disturb the newness. Do you regret that day? Elise looked up at him. The coffee. Yes. Elise's eyes shone, and she did not hide it. No. Henri's gaze softened. Neither do I. Elise hesitated, then said, Promise me something. Henri's eyes stayed on hers. Name it. When you walk into rooms like that salon, Elise said, do not forget the people who have to be brave in smaller rooms. Henri nodded once. I promise. Elise added, voice low, and if I ever begin to believe I am small again. Henri's hand tightened gently around hers. Then I will remind you with the truth. Elise's breath caught. And if you ever begin to grow cold again. Henri's mouth tightened and his voice turned quiet and sincere. Then you will remind me with yours. They walked a little farther. Madame Sabine's carriage followed at a respectful distance, slow and careful. Elise looked back once, not at the salon, not at the Duchess, not at the whispers, but at the simple idea that a person could choose kindness and still survive. Henri leaned closer, not for display, but to speak so only she could hear. You changed my house with a coin. Elise let out a soft laugh. It was not a coin, it was a choice. Henri nodded. Then let us keep choosing. And in that steady, unadorned vow, Elise understood the lesson her life had been forcing upon her all along. A single act of compassion, done without vanity, can pull truth into the light, can humble the proud, and can open a door for love to walk through with its head held high. Thank you so much for listening to this story, all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.